What is happening, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be taking you through our progress of our Thermaltake TIE Fighter Advanced custom PC that we built earlier last year. I hope you all enjoy, and remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below in the comments. Starting things off, we've actually used a plant holder which we have used to form up the actual ball of the TIE Fighter. 4 of them will be put in place to keep the actual shape of the ball down, and right now what we're doing is we're putting in some fiberglass bog body filler onto the inside of the ball and also on the outside of the ball, and then just sanding that all back nice and flat. The inside of the ball is actually pretty hard to reach, so I have to use my Delta sander in there because of the curvature of the ball shape. So I've cut out the window of the ball, and now I'm actually joining the 2 sections together using a bit more bog and then sanding that back with my sander nice and smooth, so we have a good smooth surface to work with. Now it's onto the actual framework of the build itself. Now, I didn't want to include all of the cutting into the build for you guys. That was hours and hours upon cutting of the framework, but you guys can see that I got all of the channels there and it's starting to form up nicely. Now I am cutting out the top section of the actual build, which I need hollow, obviously, to take the motherboard in and out like so. Now that I've got one section of the ball cut out, I can use that as a template so that the 2 sections line up for a nice circular hole in the build. Just using a bit of pen to mark that out, and here it is all cut out, which is really shaping up to be an awesome TIE Fighter. A bit more sanding on the inside just to sand all of that back where I joined the 2 sections together, and of course on the outside as well, making that nice and smooth as you guys can see here. Now I did spend a lot of time sanding, so I'm not going to spend any more time showing you guys that in the video because I know you guys want to see some good progress. So we have the 2 wings which I've created out of some aluminium channels. This will all be welded together. These are the 2 side sections which come out off of the ball itself, which are really looking nice, and the whole build is starting to shape up. Bit more cutting, we've got the side sections all cut out, so this will make for the back section, which will house the power supply and the whole bulk of the build. The power supply will actually slide in and out of this section, which will be covered with some aluminium sheeting. Here's what it looks like in place so far, and we've also started to form up those side sections with those aluminium parts being pronged up for a section, just to show you guys what it looks like. A bit of tape to hold it in place, and of course the wings as well, which will also have some mesh to try and create that nice wing shape which TIE Fighters are known for. Now here's our Core P5 part. We're actually taking out the motherboard tray and we're going to be shaping that up to fit within the ball. Using my jigsaw, I just cut out the shape so that it will circular and it fits in like so. Now here's the radiator brackets from the Core P5, which will be slotting onto the wings, as you can see there, one on each side to house the radiators. Here's some sliding drawer things, and we're going to be using this galvanized brick vent to hold our power supply in place. This will be able to slide in and out like so, as you are seeing right now, and basically I'm just going to be welding the power supply bracket down into the build. I've used some steel rods to hold the whole system together, to hold the bulk of the weight, and of course we've also spot welded all that aluminium together, creating a nice solid shape. So it's all one shape now, and of course we've pronged that motherboard tray up using those steel rods on the inside, just with a bit of a spot weld. Now that it's all in place, we're trying to grind down those spot welds, making them nice and smooth, but there is still a bit of work to do there. Now we're using some multiple aluminium sheets and of course a bit of this foam, which we're using to carve out a nice triangle tip on these sections so that these multiple aluminium sheets can mount and meet up with a nice triangle shape on the end. Here's what it looks like with one of those side wings installed. with the moldable aluminium, and now we're just going to put some of that foam on there to cover the transition between the wing and the bore and make it nice and smooth so it just flows evenly. Using my knife to cut that foam out because it's really nice and soft. Such a great material to use if you want to keep it lightweight, and of course if you want to carve any shape you want, because it comes off really nice just using a Stanley knife or a sharp knife if that's all you have. So now that that's done, we have to do the underside as well to create that flow from the bore to the wing, and we're also going to be creating a square section which we can put this moldable sheet of aluminium around. Now this moldable aluminium is just held in place by a 2-part epoxy, which is very, very strong, guys. And of course, once we put the fiberglass on, then there is no need to worry about any strength in that aluminium anymore. This is just for the general shape to start with. So I've squared off that moldable foam at that section there, which will make for a nice lip for me to put the other moldable aluminium for the back section. So first off, we're going to be tacking all of these radiator mounts down in place, and then we're going to be grabbing our sheet of aluminium and we're going to be putting around that, making sure that we've got enough room to play with so there is enough airflow on the bottom. Now of course I do cut out the bottom of this moldable aluminium so that it has some room for air to come in, and of course room to flow around the build. Just cutting out the excess aluminium to create that nice curvature shape going around, and then I'm just going to be using my sticky tape to hold it up in place while we fill these side sections with a bit of foam to help create that shape at the back. We want it nice and square all around it instead of meeting to create a point. Of course, once again, just molding that foam and sanding it back. Time for the fiberglass, guys. Just coating the build in the fiberglass resin and then sticking the layer of fiberglass on top. I do about 3 layers of fiberglass. Once the first layer is on, you just brush some of this resin over that top, and then of course you just rinse and repeat until you've got enough fiberglass on the build that you require. So I'm just using the knife to cut off some of the excess fiberglass that is in place, like you can see now. Time for the front window, using a bit of vinyl on top of my acrylic so that I have something to work off of when I am cutting it out. Peeling back that application tape to reveal the acrylic window like so. Using my jigsaw blade, a plastic cutting blade to cut all of that out, and of course using a drill to get all of those small sections. And now we're actually heating it up with the barbecue because we want a nice even heat, which the heat gun couldn't do. Using the section that we actually cut out from the bore as a bit of a mold and a guide to get the right circumference of the bend that we needed. It was fairly simple, and now all we're doing is applying a 3mm thick layer of body filler before we actually sand that back. Now the reason we need this body filler on is because we're going to be doing some panel etching for the panel details on the TIE Fighter. Now the Delta sander comes in really handy when it comes to shaping up this build. You can get it right in the corner there and get a nice sharp bend where the TIE Fighter meets at the middle section and the side sections. Here it is all in place, all sanded down, and I'm just using a bit of grease remover to get rid of any dust and oil that's in place, because we're actually going to be cutting out a section in the front of this build. Using a bit of vinyl to stick on there. If I didn't clean that section with the grease remover, then the vinyl wouldn't stick because it was so dusty. Now that it is stuck on, I'm just using my grinder to get in there and remove that section, as you can see now. Now I would recommend using glasses when doing this because the stuff goes everywhere, and then I'm just using a bit of a hammer just to release that section, which is still held on a tiny bit by the aluminium, and I just clean it up. Now I'm cutting out, using my grinder, a bit of acrylic to square that section off. It's put on the inside, and then I'm putting a bit of foam on there to make sure that those edges are filled in and there is no gaps within the build. While I've got the foam out as well, I'm also going to be foaming up these sections where the guns will be going. This TIE Fighter is actually upside down at the moment, so if you can imagine carving that out into the gun shape, that's what's going to be happening. Now the barbecue was able to square this section off, but because it's so big, there was still a tiny bit of waves in there, so I just used the heat gun to heat up those waves and push them down in place. Here's that mesh I was talking about going inside of the wing to create that black solar panel TIE Fighter look. Unfortunately, we could not use solar panels because number one, they're expensive, and number two, they're so hard to come by, especially that shape and size. So that was the next best thing. Priming off the TIE Fighter, and now we're actually going to be creating two of our very own reservoirs using one reservoir. I cut it in half, and then I cut out a piece of rectangular acrylic. I tapped it so that a fitting can screw in, and now I cut out these side sections and glued it all together with my acrylic weld, as you can see now. It has a fill and drain port and of course two inlet sections. Here's my design that I'm going to be putting on the reservoir. It is, of course, Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, so why not put him in the build itself, just using my vinyl on this reservoir, and then we're going to be spray painting that grey, and then removing the Darth Vader in place to create the reservoir itself. Now, here's a bit of old motherboard that I have. I cut out this section, and then I'm going to be doing a bit of sanding on that to reveal the copper in place. I'm also doing some panel details, as you can see there, using the mold again with my heat gun to create that curvature, as you could see. Now I'm cutting out a few venting holes for the top of the build, and then I'm going to be applying this section, just following a picture which I printed out, trying to get all of that panel detail into the actual build now. The acrylic weld solution works perfect with this, creating it in place. And here's what it looks like all painted. A bit of the paint is still wet, but that is no big issue, and that's what it looks like with the mesh in place. Now, unfortunately, at this point, we ran out of time to keep filming. We had to get this build done. That's what the panel details all looks like, all painted, and here's what it looked like with me etching with my Dremel all of the panel details into the build. I hope you all enjoyed this build, guys. Please, if you did enjoy, leave a comment down below. I really do appreciate the comments, and it also helps us out. And leave a like on the video, and let me know, guys, if you did make it to the end, because I really do appreciate all of the constructive criticism and awesome comments that you guys leave me. Thank you very much. Be sure to check out more videos on the channel. We've got lots of custom PCs, lots of reviews, and lots of modding tutorials, and we'll see you all in the next video.